Hey guys, first of all, before I get into this 4.3 balance and update changes, which you can't actually see on your screen, so I'm going to move this down. Hey, now you can see it. Before I get into this balance and update changes, I'm going to just talk a little bit about kind of where I'm at with Vainglory and kind of the long-term thoughts that I have with Vainglory. I haven't been playing Vainglory much. I've been playing a little bit on my Smurf, but I haven't really been playing much for a few months now. There's a couple of reasons for that. I recently got back into League of Legends, so I knew that I had the upcoming European Masters to cast. If any of you know what the European Masters is, it's basically a tournament that's below LEC for all of the European regional leagues to take their professional players and play versus each other in a European tournament. That's what I was casting, and it's a month-long gig. I hadn't really played League for about 6 months before that. I kind of stopped playing in November last year, and the gig was through the entire of April. So said to myself, as I'm an analyst caster, I'm a color caster, I said to myself, I need to go back onto League, I need to just grind it out. And I went to League, and I grinded out with, actually, I'm the Doom, if you remember him, he's really good. Managed to get back to Diamond just before I went off to European Masters, and that kind of, I was happy with that. You know, if I went into the European Masters as a Diamond player, and that made me feel good about being able to analyze and you know, being able to do the gig to the best of my capacity. Unfortunately, because I'm also been focusing on mobile auto chess, I've also been trying to do a bit of PUBG Mobile and Cyber Hunter, also keeping up with Command & Conquer Rivals. Just didn't have enough time to play Vainglory to the way I wanted to, which is why I told myself that I would have a little bit of a break. You know, coming into the next few months, especially as there wasn't much happening on the Vainglory front. With like the balance patches weren't huge, and with this one, this balance patch isn't huge either. So you know, it won't take me too long to go over it. We're not going to have like a really long video here. I generally think my knowledge on Vainglory is still fine. I didn't do a meta video for 4.2 because I just didn't feel like I would be able to give one that was actually relevant. I'd just be using data that I don't have from. I mean, there's no VG Pro data, for instance. So with the fact that I hadn't been playing, I would have been relying on talking to people, and honestly, I just don't think I would have been able to give you guys a good tier list. But I'm actually going to be playing again from 4.3 onwards, and I'll probably be doing a tier list for this update. And most of my Vainglory content is going to come in the form of looking at new heroes when they come out on the PvE, doing balance and update notes, and mainly doing tier lists. I will also be doing maybe some infrequent Vainglory content if we see some cool builds come out. But someone like Dienzio, I fully recommend that you go and check out his channel. He posts loads of gameplay videos, really high tier player. I would definitely recommend sort of going to Dienzio's channel if you want to sort of consume regular Vainglory content in terms of gameplay and stuff. I just have got so many games going on that it's very difficult for me to do. And since Vainglory esports isn't a thing, I can't justify dedicating all this time to Vainglory because my job is to commentate on esports. So I need to be up with the games that are actually giving me work. In terms of esports, and that's why I hadn't like spent a lot of time on Vainglory recently. There is some exciting news, hopefully, coming soon. So to do with Vainglory, I will keep you guys updated though when I'm allowed to talk about it. If I'm allowed to talk about it, I'm not sure yet. But I'll definitely keep you guys updated, and it's part of the reason why I'll be playing a lot more Vainglory again recently. And no, it's not esports, before you get that idea. It's not Vainglory esports, but I will be playing a lot more Vainglory just because of some exciting news coming up. So I'm going to quickly go over these balance changes. Basically on my thoughts about, from what I thought of last update, I've talked to a few people how they felt about certain changes, and there aren't any big changes here to talk about. From what we can see here with the 5v5 meta, we will talk about Blacklaw and Ghostwing. They've basically made the Fire Breath, which deals a lot of damage now. They've decrease the cooldown. They're trying to make Blacklaw and Ghostwing more threatening to take. Interesting, maybe I already thought that they upped the intensity level of taking Blacklaw and Ghostwing on the last update, but maybe they really want to solidify those two on 5v5 as just the big objectives. Like you need to focus those as a unit. You can't like sort of 2-man or 3-man. You need to make sure that it's several people trying to take that at once. I'm gonna sort of play and see how this feels to take each one of them on this update. I'll talk about it when I can. I might do like a mid-update conversation where I just talk about how I feel the meta's gone. But yeah, this is just basically making Ghostwing and Blacklaw slightly harder to take. There's no item changes on this update, so we can just go through the heroes. Baron, range has gone down, and they've also fixed a bug with his ion cannon. The ultimate had a bug on its attack range, which made his attack range like super long, all the way up to, I believe, 8.1, which is pretty ridiculous. But they've cut his range in general, and they've fixed the bug to go back to normal on his attack range bonus. But it will still bring his attack range up to 7.5, which is pretty long attack range. Blackfeather, he's going to be having a barrier duration up to 2 seconds, which I actually think makes CP Blackfeather really, really relevant again. Like a 2-second barrier duration. They kind of got rid of this initially because CP Blackfeather was really obnoxious to deal with. I actually think this is going to make CP Blackfeather really good. I think they've slowly been trying to force Blackfeather into the meta in 5v5, and I think CP Blackfeather's been the only one that's kind of stuck around. I know some people have played Weapon Power Blackfeather, but the barrier duration has generally always helped CP Blackfeather more than anything. So I'm interested to see whether this, essentially a massive increase on the duration of the barrier, helps CP Blackfeather more than anything. I'll have a look at Gwen. Gwen's range has been cut, and the cooldown on Skedaddle has actually been pretty heavily nerfed in the late game, so she wouldn't be able to just spam Skedaddle to get out of all the CC. Gwen is obnoxious to play against in solo queue. Remember, high tier players probably know how to deal with her, but I think throughout the tiers, Gwen has always been quite obnoxious to deal with. For the simple fact is that she's got very oppressive kind of kit. Like, if she gets ahead, she's very difficult to play against. And the extended range, the empowered passive basic attack, she's always been quite difficult across the tiers, and I think she's always had one of the best win rates as a carry because she's quite simple and she's quite abusive in terms of being a bit of a lane bully. So they're just trying to cut down some of the range on Gwen here. Idris's Shroud Step has been buffed again, essentially trying to make it more relevant for him to dash in, especially when he's on his weapon power build. I honestly don't think this is going to affect him that much. In terms of Baron, and I think Blackfeather makes CP Blackfeather. In terms of Gwen, I think that makes her, definitely hurts her a little bit, but she's still going to have, fairly obnoxious lane potential, especially versus melee heroes. With Idris's change, I don't think this is going to affect him that much, realistically. The only thing it could affect is his ability to trade in lane in the early game, but really, Idris always was a scaling hero, so you get to the late game where it's 8 seconds and it's the same, whenever you overdrive it. I don't think it's going to make that much difference, personally, anyway. I think these kind of changes are minor, a little bit of quality of life change that might help you in, 1 out of 10 scenarios where you're escaping and you need the extra 2 seconds cooldown early on. But, really, when I look at Idris, I'm always thinking about the late game, and I'm looking at the fact that level 5 is the same both ways, and it's probably not going to shift his power too much. Kinetic gets a portrait for this one. She's had a range nerfed. Plasma Driver energy cost actually scales up. The dash empowered duration is down to 3 seconds, and the bonus damage has also been cut as well as across the board, is scaling up to a lower amount too. The slow duration is also down. I think Kinetic needed a nerf. Sorry, I'm going to scroll down so you can see that. I think Kinetic definitely needed a nerf. I've been talking about it for patches or updates that she keeps getting buffs, and I'm not sure why. I think it's I think we need to look at it from the opposite end of the spectrum. I always talk about it from a perspective of a high tier player, but you look at it at the other end of the spectrum. Kinetic is an incredibly hard hero to play. Let's compare it to Gwen. Gwen is a really easy hero to play. You tap on the hero that you want to hit and they die. Kinetic has so much more to her kit that you need to thread together to make work. Do you know what, guys? I'm actually just going to try and make this screen. Give me a second. How do I make this screen? You're going to see this in the video. You're going to see me resizing in the video. All right, there we go. That's slightly better now, isn't it? So Kinetic is a really, really difficult hero to play, and I think the majority of players probably don't play her to her full potential. So when we saw her getting buffed over and over again, it's probably because her win rate across all tiers was pretty bad, because she's a really hard hero to actually play to her full potential. But she was quite obnoxious in high tiers because players that knew how to play her played her really well. Let's have a look at Koshka here. The duration on her Blood Rush perk. So when it comes to Koshka, the duration on her Blood Rush perk got cut. Koshka is a super snowbally jungler. A lot of high tier players would say, well, why are you nerfing Koshka? She wasn't exactly meta. But Koshka is one of those heroes, especially across all tiers. And this is the thing that I think a lot of people need to realize. Balance isn't just for tier 10s. It's for tier 1s to tier 10s, or tier 4s to tier 10s, balancing should be done to help everybody across all tiers, and Koshka is one of those junglers. She's very easy to play. She can be quite obnoxious with the Blood Rush when it gets rolling. I completely understand why they've nerfed her. Just because, again, if you make Koshka too good, she becomes oppressive to especially lower to mid tiers, where it's so difficult to stop a snowball in Koshka. This is just going to stop her jungle speed clear. It's also going to stop her gank potential a little bit. So I do completely understand why the perk got cut slightly, because she is just such an oppressive hero if she gets rolling. And it's the same with Cruel. If Cruel becomes too good, he becomes really good because he's just quite a simple hero to get to grips with. The Spectral Smite cooldown is kind of cool. It's going to help him clear a bit better. But, again, Cruel is one of those heroes that I think is always going to thrive in 3v3 because of how close the map is. In 5v5, there are less opportunities for him to find his heroic perk. There's less opportunities for him to find ganks. It's much more difficult, I think, to make Cruel work in 5v5. Still going to be good 3v3. I think Cruel always will be pretty good 3v3. But in general on 5v5, I think it's going to be difficult to make Cruel work regardless, even if you nerf the cooldown on his or buff the cooldown on his Spectral Smite. Magnus. Split missile range and also the Seraphic Flare split missile. So basically the missiles that split off when you hit a Mystic Missile or you proc it with the ultimate have gone down. I like that because I felt like it was a ridiculous level of range to get like 8 when you hit a Seraphic Flare and it kind of hit people on the other side of the team fight. This is like situational. I think overall this is going to make Magnus worse, but if you still find those grouped up team fights, this isn't going to affect his overall damage output. And in the laning phase, it's probably not going to affect his damage output too much either. It's a pretty significant nerf, don't get me wrong. That's 25% range cut on all of his missiles in terms of the little missiles that flare off when you proc them. But overall, it's situational. Like sometimes you'll find that Magnus plays exactly the same. Sometimes you're going to find that it's a bit more difficult to get the team-wide damage off. This will reduce his power level a little bit, but Magnus's kit is still really good, and I still think we'll see Magnus played. Good. I'm going to just highlight this. I thought that the nerf to Ringo's Twirling Silver last update was just too ridiculous. They made his Twirling Silver cooldown really, really long, and he kind of relies on that ability as a weapon power carry. Without Twirling Silver, Ringo as a weapon power carry is just garbage. Like, he is literally just garbage. So nerfing Twirling Silver too much with the cooldown, I think really hurt him. So I like that they brought it down to 8 seconds. That should bring it to especially with Spell Sword, that should bring it to a fairly manageable cooldown level. So yeah, I think this was the right move. I felt bad for poor Ringo on the last update. Let's have a look at Silver Nail. The cooldown on his stake has been nerfed, buffed when you overdrive it. Not many people overdrive the stake though. But, if you do, you get the cooldown reduction, and the slow has been up to 40%. Again, Silvernail, really hard carry to play properly, so that these kind of buffs are not going to affect the general population of players. And I actually don't think a 1 second... I mean, I think this is like a minimal change. This is like a minimal change to Silvernail. It's probably not going to affect him too much. Takaku, bonus movement speed. He is a speedy boy in the early game. I actually think this is going to help his jungle clear speed. I think it's going to help his ganking. It's definitely going to help weapon power attacker in the early game, especially too, because you don't tend to put too many points in this early on. But it's a massive movement speed increase on just the first level. Goes up to the same amount of movement speed in the late game. But in the early game, that's a massive amount of movement speed, which is going to make his early skirmishing much better. And as a weapon power attacker, you're going to find a lot of these earlier skirmishes easier to navigate and find your targets. So I actually think this is a pretty significant buff to weapon power attacker overall. Good for CP attacker too, of course. But in general, especially before you get X-Retsu, this is like a really good way of negotiating your way around ganks and around skirmishes. And that's actually going to really help weapon power attacker overall. Varia, range has been nerfed. The cooldown on her arc recursion has been buffed. The barrier duration, however, has been nerfed. Kind of in the late game, but not in the early game, in the barrier duration. Why do you keep hitting Varia? Like, I suppose Varia is also one of those carries where she's just like quite oppressive to play against in the lower tiers, because all you need to do is basic attack people and they generally tend to die because she has that ability to just chain that lightning together. I never thought arc recursion was like massively impactful in the early game, but now it's going to be like really like you get a nerf in the late game, and the barrier duration is also down. So you have to be much more careful about when you use it, and using it to absorb damage as well, also going to be an issue. The range nerf is also pretty significant too, because that was one of the pulls of Varia, that she was a basic attack focus carry, and the extended range was good for her. Varia already was not top tier in my opinion. She's definitely going to be kind of like a niche pick. Like me, if you're a Varia main, you're going to have to put up with it, but she's going to be a bit of a niche pick. Vox's attack range has gone up. This is good because people kept telling me that Vox is probably going to be bad forever because of the range. His range going up to 5.8 almost puts him on par with the likes of Gwen. And that actually point to attack range increase is probably pretty good for Vox and might make weapon power Vox pretty solid again. Also going to help his CP Vox. I actually think Vox is in a really good spot, and this is only going to help him even more. People kept telling me that weapon power Vox is garbage, and I probably quite agree with them. But I actually think the range increase here is pretty significant, and we might see a little bit more Vox coming back into the meta. The only problem with Vox is that his damage is quite low compared to a lot of other carries. He takes a while to stack up Breaking Point, and Breaking Point's kind of his core item. You don't really see many Breaking Points. Like, it's not as good of an item as it once was. But the range increase is nice, especially for CP Vox, which is still seeing quite a bit of play. All right, that's everything actually on this update notes. I will probably put out a Vainglory tier list video when I feel comfortable having played a bit more. It might not even be this update. It might be towards the end of this update, unfortunately. I just need to get back to getting to grips with the game again at a high level. I've been too busy focused on sort of the other gigs that I had for esports, and I hope you guys understand it's just kind of how my job is. But yeah, thank you guys so much, and I will see you soon.